Hi, it's Carl Munson on the Outnet Facebook page, the place for conversations, and I'm delighted to have Britt Tanya with me. Hi, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks.
It's
And how are
so good
you?
to Josh. I'm really well. I'm really well. Despite everything, I guess that's the caveat people have at the moment, isn't it? Despite everything, at the moment, and there are ups and downs, we're doing fine. And in a very timely way, you're joining us today. I'm sure we'll talk about other things, but specifically, you thought dealing with uncertainty and fear might be useful, perhaps to sort of work
A little
your
bit.
first. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, yeah, the polite and obvious thing to do is to ask you a little bit about yourself and how you got to be. The phrase that stood out for me was a consciousness adventurer.
I think it's weird. I think I went through the first sort of 20 to 30 years of my life. 20, yeah, 20, anyway, knowing that I was kind of here to do something, but not quite sure what on earth that actually was. Because nothing really sort of spoke to me or sort of made me feel alive. And then somebody introduced me to coaching. And before the coaching, I kind of started to explore energy work.
Uh-huh.
And I think there was just a fascination about how do we work as humans. I find being human just such a fascinating thing, and how people can experience different things. You can have a family that goes through the same experience, but they all come away with different ways of experience, of having felt it.
Yeah.
Um, and I just find that absolutely fascinating. So I think that's just how I started. Yeah.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Real.
And obviously now in the coronavirus times, we have a different context, don't we, for all of that to take place right now. How is that for you at the moment?
Well, we were kind of sailing along in a bit of a bubble, really, I think, because most of my business is online anyway. So I wasn't really affected by having not to go into work or anything like that. We live in a really beautiful space, so we've got a garden and things like that. So even if we had to isolate, I wouldn't feel like I didn't have the ability to go outside.
Mm.
But then the schools got closed, and I've got two sons, both of which one of them is doing GCSEs and one of them is doing A levels, and of course the
Wow.
exams were cancelled, and that threw us a complete curveball. And that was what started me thinking about all this uncertainty and fear,
Yeah.
and how everybody involved in the coronavirus in some way or other is most likely going to be affected, whether
Yes.
through the actual illness or through not being able to work or just going to the shops and not getting food. Yeah, it's something that
Yeah.
touches everyone's lives, I think.
It's a phenomenon, isn't it? It's an event that's going seems to be going far beyond the disease itself. So specifically, then, excuse me, I've got a cough. It's not a dry one. Um, Dealing with uncertainty and fear. What would you say about that?
So I've kind of been working on a model of being human, or what it is to be human. And just very briefly, it's sort of split into two parts. So the way I see it, a lot of us live in survival mode, where we're ruled by our subconscious mind, and we get triggered by things that happen externally, and we react, and all of that creates the reality that we live in. But I think that there's a shift and a desire for the world to start living more consciously. And what I mean by living more consciously, and I'm just going to clarify because so many people take so many different things away from what it means to be conscious. For me, it's just about being more aware. So more aware of who you really, really are, sort of the authenticity of who you are. And even that in itself is a whole massive topic, because people don't always understand what it really means to be authentic.
Mm.
Being authentic doesn't mean just being emotional and chucking whatever you're experiencing out onto the world. It's
Yeah.
a much deeper thing. And I think that's where uncertainty and fear come from, where this sort of automated survival aspect of our humanity is being seriously triggered. I think at our absolute sort of fundamental need to survive is a need to know that tomorrow when we wake up, the world will be as it was when we went to sleep.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's not like that. I mean, we tune into the news every night just to find out what dramatic changes are going to be happening to us the next day.
Yeah.
Um, so that certainty is no longer there for anybody. We're just waiting to hear what is going on next. And that creates an enormous amount of fear, because as humans, that need to survive is massive. And that's, I suppose, what I want to talk about is how do we hold the space to be who we want to be when all around us is changing and chaotic.
Mm. So yeah, and I'm asking you in this tiny little window of opportunity and time to say, okay, how do we do that?
Easy. In theory, it's easy. In practice, it's not so easy. I mean, I know all of this stuff, and I still got triggered when my kids' exams were cancelled. And luckily, knowing it helped me to kind of recalibrate. But I think the first step is really just to be aware. There's something I tell all of my clients, and to me, it's the most fundamentally important thing, and it's so small, and that's to pause. So when something happens in your reality, when for me the schools are closed and the exams are cancelled, or when your business is threatened, or when somebody falls ill, or when something drastic happens as it is at the moment on a daily basis, just pause. Don't go immediately into reaction to whatever it is that's going on. The next thing is really just to notice what's happening inside of you, what you're feeling. And in that moment, just to allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling whilst breathing. I think your last guest spoke about breathing, didn't she?
Yes, well, yeah, that was Freya who taught us the 7-11 breathing technique.
Absolutely.
Yes,
and that's
really.
something that you can apply in this situation as well. So you pause, acknowledge what you're actually experiencing, and then stop and breathe. But I take the breathing a step deeper and really pay attention to how the air feels when it comes into your lungs and how it feels going into your nose and down your throat. And really be aware of what it feels like when you release all of that. And the reason that that is so important is that when we're triggered and when we go into reaction, we immediately, all of our awareness goes up into our mind. As our thoughts fly through our head and we try and find a way through all the data and the knowledge and the history that we've created in our subconscious on how we're going to deal with this problem. But as Einstein says, I can't remember the exact phrase. Now I'm feeling under pressure to remember the quote.
Breathe.
About exactly, breathe. It's something about you can't solve today's problems with yesterday's thinking.
Yes, yeah, so, it's the same level of consciousness. I think he said, and exactly. you can't deal with it at the same level of consciousness at which it was created. Yes, yeah, for sure.
And that's really where we need to change. And if you go straight into reaction, you're going into that level of consciousness that has created the world we're in at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Pausing, acknowledging, and breathing, you bring yourself down into your heart center, into your body, and out of that crazy noise that goes on in your head. And in that space, you can then ask yourself, who do I want to be in this situation? And then choose to act from that space rather than the reaction to the craziness that's going on in the world.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And in a nutshell, that is beautiful. And I think that is what the great heroes do, I have to say, because it does sound luxurious, doesn't it? It does sound very first world and like, oh yeah, of course, that's what you should do. My observation is of heroic people, like paramedics, for example, they can't flap, can they? They have, they sometimes, I've seen paramedics at work and it's like, I'm thinking, could you hurry up a bit? But what they're doing is like, they are regulating themselves in that way, aren't they? They are thinking about, okay, what's really going on here? What do I need to be? I need to be in my body. I can't just be reacting from a sort of purely emotional space. And I think that's incredible advice. So thank you very much for that.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I know that it's easier said than done. Yeah. And as I said, I mean, when the exams got cancelled, I did go into reaction. But the more that we are aware of this process, the more we can catch ourselves, and the more you practice it, the sooner you can catch yourself. And before you know it, then no time kind of goes past before you recenter yourself and start being who you want to be. And I suppose the caveat to that is really also deciding who you want to be.
Yes, very important. Very important.
Yeah, a lot of us don't believe that we have a choice, but we do.
Yes, yeah, that's such great guidance, advice, and goodness knows we're going to have a chance to practice that.